Welcome back to another episode of The Clean Truth. I am Dawson Holt.
I'm Ben Jones, and tonight we have the privilege of hosting Kalman Csoka and Marcel Jones, two legends, icons, pioneers of the sport. Thank you guys for taking the time to be with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, pleasure being on with you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. So we've got a lot of great topics coming up. We just closed out the Battle of Atlanta last weekend. Now we're kind of looking forward to diving into the U.S. Open coming up this next upcoming weekend. So Dawson had some good success at the tournament. Felt good about some of the things that I did as well. So just always looking forward to the next thing. Feeling satisfied. Happy but not satisfied, always striving for more, but excited for what's coming next. So both of you guys were in attendance of the Battle of Atlanta. I would love for you guys to just give a quick, maybe 30 seconds to a minute kind of recap of what you saw, and then we'll dive into some of those topics just a little bit bigger as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't been at a World Tour scale tournament in about 2 years. Obviously the competition level of competition in the divisions, from what I've noticed from 2 years ago, maybe even 5, 6, 7 years ago, is getting deeper and deeper, which is good to see. I think that's a testament to you guys, I think, coaching up, helping to coach up the next generation of people. I thought the energy as far as that goes was good. I think what the promoters are doing to try to figure out ways to, keep people engaged, keep people coming to tournaments, et cetera, I think is good. So just kind of being out of the loop from a World Tour tournament standpoint for the last 2 years, good turnout, good energy.
Yeah, for me, I like seeing the turnout, being, Joe Curley black belts and like the Battle of Atlanta being like our first tournament, to see kind of the volume go up and down, over the decades. Sometimes you expect it, but sometimes when it hits that low, you don't. So it's really good to see youth and adult divisions, boy, girl, men, women, to have the populace of competitors. That's good. To Kalman's point, you guys being persistent with your presence also, people have something to look forward to. They know they need to invest in the long game, not the short. So it's good to see familiar faces. I think I was asked actually by Joe Corley, over the weekend, when I think about the battle, do I think nostalgia? Do I think like what's going on? And I was like, for the first time, I kind of felt nostalgia because I'm seeing you guys as adults. There are people that have 10 plus years in, 15 plus years in, that are still competing. And so that nostalgia feelings, there. I do like the parity and the variety in the divisions. So it was a good, tournament weekend as far as, the turnout, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. I think something that I, at least from my perspective, I really appreciate is having people like you guys around still within this current generation. I think, for one, it's crazy that some people may not know who you guys are. So they need to do their research and look at the history behind it all. But then to have you guys' presence there, I think is huge as well. People appreciate that. If they can get any little small nugget or any type of conversation or any little advice from people from your generation, I think is so, so important. And I think it's highly encouraging as well, just to have you guys around. And of course, you get the people who do know who you are, who are like, oh my gosh, Kalman Csoka is walking around the tournament, or that's Marcel Jones judging right now. So I think it's highly appreciated for you guys' presence to be there and to give back in any sort of way. As you kind of talked about, to see the gap, even in the last 2 years, like you said, Kalman, of everybody's really pushing and the energy's high and it feels good, right? We want to kind of just get some general thoughts. What do you think about the current generation of competitors? If you look at a forms division or a weapons division, and then you think back to when you were competing, what's highly different? What is similar? What kind of stands out in that regard?
Take this one first.
Yeah. What I'll say is the current competitors, very, very talented. I've said multiple times, super talented, right? And I mean, that's something that reminds me of our generation when we were in youth, right? You guys double, triples, the combinations, the variations, the weaponry manipulations, top notch. But what I'll say is different though is I would like to see more individuality, right? And so I don't know, maybe it's because the generation that's competing, it's short lived. Like we were competing in NASCAR, you know, Kalman, how old were we? Like 9, 8?
Started at 6, but yeah.
6, you know, and so I think you have people that they just do a few years in youth and a few years in adult, or a few years in youth and never do the adult. And so we don't see that maturation process. So very high difficulty, you know, hands, feet, kicks, tricks for sure. But I'm not seeing, I would love to see a little bit more individuality. And I think that's what our generation had. You know, you had wushu stylists in the youth divisions, winning first in musical, right? Winning the grands. You had that also in the men and the women. And so a little bit more variety as far as individual competitors I'd like to see, but definitely I'm seeing a constant increase in difficulty in the talent that's, you know, put on stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, is when we were competing 14 to 17 years old in those divisions, it's funny, you know, tricking was not really its identity yet as far as being a standalone thing, right? So when we would trick, we would learn how to trick, whether it be via you know, extreme martial arts or with the weapons, to put it into form, right? Like we tricked with the purpose to put it into form. Tricking really started taking off. Charlie Nationals would have separate rings for open tricking. You know, if it introduced the whole extreme tricks contest, you know, back in 2020 or 2000, right? So so that came about, and then when tricking really kind of took off and become its own identity, right? It almost like the mindset of form shifted into, all right, let's from an open hand form standpoint, let's see how much hard stuff we can put in the form, put the hardest stuff in the form, right? And even the same thing with the weapons, right? Put the hardest moves in the forms that we could. But right, I think there was more individuals that had that identity, to Marcel's point, back when we competed, to where there was a little bit more remembrance of those individuals, and remembrance of those individuals because of the iconic nature in which they competed, right? The stuff we were doing back in the day wasn't nearly as difficult as the stuff being done nowadays, but we framed it out in such a way to where it looked like a big event within the form, right? So nowadays you have so many hard things being done in the routines, and it's coming at the judges and even at the spectators who don't know maybe the intricacies of the difficulties of the moves. It's coming at them so fast with so many things within the form that it's hard for competitors like yourself to hit a good form, or maybe do a form and have a little bobble. But it's hard to compare that form to another form because there's so much going on within it, right? To where it's tough to decipher the standout moments within the form, right? So what I saw this tournament, maybe I'm off base, but what I saw this tournament more than what I've seen 2 years ago or 3, 4, 5 years prior to that, it looks like there's a little bit of a shift. I think it's directed by you guys, the current adult competitors. There's a little bit more of a shift into making some of those moments stand out better. And if we could kind of see some more of that, I think that'll help this current generation, you guys being adults, also the youth competitors, be able to trend toward more remembrance of performances, more iconic performances, to where now people can start to look different, have their own path as far as their own style, their own identity, right, etc. So
nice. I appreciate that perspective big time. I think anybody who's listening in should highly take into consideration whatever we're hearing, and just think through, like, as you were talking, I was thinking through my form. I'm like, do I have like a standout moment that doesn't get, you know, overshadowed by other standout moments, to where it's just, there's, like you said, almost too much, to where it's hard to appreciate like the move or the main trick or something big that goes along with it. Last little kind of subtopic within this question: were there anybody that you saw throughout the weekend that kind of stood out that you wanted to maybe highlight or shout out, whether it's a student you've been working with that, really executed over the weekend, or just something you saw, whether you know who it was or not, anything big that stood out from the current generation?
Both you guys, Dawson, for me especially, just I think he does a good job of presenting, performing, and competing with his strengths and not putting on display weaknesses. Ben, you do the same thing, do a great job of that. And the reason why I highlight that is to Kalman's point, to both of you, like there's a lot of stuff going on, and there are people that have multiple big moments in their form, but it's not just the moment, it's how you accentuate the moment, right? So if you're doing a really big move, for example, to your knee, and then you just bounce right up and then walk 5 feet to one direction, you didn't sell it, So there's, I think you guys do a good job of presenting the form from start to finish, right? It's a form. I say form is short for 2 words, format and performance, right? You're performing a format. You do a good job of that. I would say I really like the creativity that Haley did and with her CMX weapon. A lot of people, not a lot, well, most people don't do, the switchblade commas. If they do, they don't really use it that well. I thought she did a good job of just showing that individuality, for sure, with that.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are looking at the men's divisions, women's divisions up on stage, right? That's essentially, you guys have hit peak performance as far as, I mean, we can always level up on things, but you guys have hit peak performance as far as strength, speed, right? Owning your style, your craft, right? And so, having, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It seems like you guys, Esteban, Ben, Dawson, are putting more emphasis on trying to be creative, whether that be in the creative format or the extreme format, trying to be creative around transitions, how we're releasing the weapon, how we're catching the weapon, right? Rather than just making it difficult, right? Make it creative. I think you guys, again, it's something I noticed a little bit more of this weekend than what I did when I was present 2 years ago and then back further. Yes, whenever we're in a CMX division and you're forced to do creative because of that's what you want in, that's the essence of the form that you have to compete in. Those are some special moments for some people because it really makes them work outside of the box to stay competitive enough within the intricacies and the level of difficulty within that confinement of a creative form to stay competitive enough with the ones who are doing the extreme version of their form, right? So Marcel's point, Haley Glass doing the switchblade commas, haven't seen that in a while. That's a tough weapon to do because the balance is different on those than a regular comma. Ben coming out with commas in the preliminary divisions, right? I mean, that just shows that, okay, you're a good, well-rounded martial artist, right? A front stance is a front stance, a turn's a turn, a spin's a spin, can you make that crossover into other weaponry, and both of you obviously show that when you're up there doing a team sync form, team weapon form, fusing it together at the same time, et cetera. But again, I mean, I think the younger generation is looking at you guys and following you guys and wanting to maybe strive to do the same things, right? So, there was all kinds of examples of seeing, again, creative aspects of weapon work, et cetera, throughout the weekend. That wasn't just about how hard can this move be or how hard can my form be. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys, and appreciate the shout outs.
Yeah, we're not just blowing smoke just because you guys are having us on here.
Yeah,
it's just
you should know that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. No, it's but yeah, that's something that, I mean, all of us are teammates and we compete against each other, and we all have these conversations about, forms now, and that's some of the things that I've been doing more recently now is that, I said it on here before, but I got, invested into some DVDs in black and blue, and just watching forms, what it used to look like, back in like 2006, 2001, like early 2000, and just seeing, I mean, all you guys and even the juniors back then. And yeah, like seeing that and how big the divisions were back in the night show, there was like what, like six to, there's a lot of you guys. Yeah. Something crazy. Like
it was
now
youth,
it's
boys and girls.
yeah. They would put them all together, and then, yeah, that, and you guys didn't have puzzle mats too, but that's beside the point. But I guess what I'm trying to
hardcore, Dawson.
When we did, they came apart in the middle of the division.
Oh yeah, for sure. Not the then Capital Classics and other tournaments had concrete, no tarp on top, straight concrete.
This is why I can't walk today.
Yeah.
Why we've got surgeries under our belts.
Yeah. That's just
Brutal.
Yikes. Yeah, but I guess just trying to echo from you guys, that's something that I would just always I try to teach that to students that I work with nowadays. It's just like presentation goes a long way, and if you don't want to do too much, but you just have to think outside of the box, like with music too. Intros, like how you transition into a trick combination. Everyone loves to go right to left. That was my thought process in creative forms, where it's like, well, I don't want to do a creative trick pass going from right to left like everyone else does. I want to do singular tricks and train them as best as I could, so that way they would stick out more, right? So, but yeah. So I would like to transition and move on to the next question for you guys, and that's you guys have been you've had a friendship in martial arts for how long? Like, how did you guys first become friends?
I mean, back Marcel mentioned earlier, but two, Joe Corley black belts, and I mean, 8, 9 years old, and running around at his karate school in Marietta, Georgia, to trying to break onto the scene at the tournaments in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I mean, kind of grew up in the same system, same style.
When did you test for your second degree?
Tested for second degree. Oh man, that was 8, so 93.
So like before that, because I think I may have been at Kalman's first degree test. And like I said, there was a Joe Corley location in Marietta. On the weekends, his mom would bring him by to spar. We'd work out, and that school opened up. I was 8. So lifelong, childhood friends at that time. We see each other at the tournaments, competing against each other. He got his black belt before me, so it'd be spectating, each other before that. But yeah, that's how long the two we've been friends.
Wow. Gotcha. Okay. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, man. Okay. So you guys, for people tuning in who don't know, that you guys used to do Team Sync together, and I wanted to ask you guys to talk about the dynamic of you guys training together in sync. We'll start there first, and just go ahead, just talk about that before I add on to that question.
Yeah, I'll start off and then pass it to Kalman. So there was an opportunity for us to do Team Sync in 2004. I actually didn't really compete at all much in 2003. I think I might have done 1 or 2 tournaments. My focus was school, and then I would do some local demos in Team Sync. And so I had a different Team Sync partner who I would compete with. He stopped, and then I wanted to keep it going. And Kalman was the first thought to mine, and I think he was rehabbing an injury. which is why he hadn't come back yet to competing. And so that's what started it. I was like, hey man, I'd like to do team sync. I'd like to do it with you. And so we did that. And most people may not know, to your point, that we did team sync, but most people may not know the first year we did team sync, that's all Kalman did. Right.
Yeah.
And so I like to call attention to that, to remind people. I love my journey. I love our journey. It's like, I think a lot of people are just doing divisions because they can. And, to have an adult travel the NASCAR circuit doing one division, which was a team division, right? And then you say that person's Kalman Csoka, who clearly has his own individual super talents and skill sets, right? That he matured and then put on display after the fact. And so, that's how we did the team sync, and I was talking to Carmichael Simon before. I'm gonna give him credit for this. I think what worked really well for us to do team sync as well as we did was you have to have peace for harmony. And so what I mean by that is, so Kalman, and he'll speak on himself, has a work ethic, has had and always has had a work ethic that's been tried and true, right? He's had good people in his ear, his mom and instructors. I had a work ethic or discipline that I thought was, I was at peace with, right? So us as individuals, we're at peace with our process and our procedures as competitors, right? And so when we, trust each other as individuals and we're at peace as individuals, what we do, you have individual competitors that don't like the division they're in. They don't like the form they're doing, right? They'll say that all the time. They lose, they think, the sky is falling, but like win or lose, I know that, he had a process to get to the end result. He knew I had my process as well. And so when you take two disciplined, diligent individuals together for a common goal, like that's how the harmony, was able to take place and be so consistent, right? There wasn't you want to train, like, oh no, not really. Like, I thinking back on it, I would drive 2 hours in the middle of a school day, in college, and we would train. And we would not play around. And I'd drive 2 hours back down and finish school or teach, right? He would drive and, hour plus, like just, I think having that personal connection, being friends, knowing the family structure we both had, we don't want to let ourselves down. We don't want to let the other person down. And I mean, I think that's how like that cohesion was able to take place as fast as it did, right? And for as long as it did,
Awesome.
Wow. So how long did you guys do sync together? A couple years?
Yeah, a couple of years, 2004, 2005,
Okay. That's awesome. Well, it's you may have just answered my second question or adding on into it, but yeah, just hearing you talk about just the respect that you guys have for both of each other and your skill sets as well. So since you guys also trained together in sync, like with your individual forms that you guys did you guys also help each other out with that as well? Like give each other feedback and critiques?
Well, yes, for me, yes. When I got in the adult division in 2003 and I was trying to figure stuff out, right? You do extreme forms and, I was, at the time I was, doing sword too, but nowhere near wasn't nearly putting in the work the way I should have. And starting the team sync with Marcel really helped me to hone in and focus on something where I, got some confidence. And again, when you're doing team sync, there's another person that's relying on you to lock in, show up, be on point, right? It's not just you out there, right? So there's another person giving their time, giving their energy, getting themselves to the tournament, right? That's relying on you to hold up their half of the deal in that routine, right? So it goes back to the training, to Marcel's point. Talk about efficiency of training, right? We have an hour to knock this out. Let's go do it. You know, you're driving up here 2 hours. It's 8 o'clock at night. All right, we're going to do section 1 twice, roll that in. You know, we're going to do 1 and 2, and we're doing section 2 twice. Boom, boom, boom. Before you know it, hours up. Cool. All right, we accomplished everything we needed to. Bam. You know, on to the next thing, because he's in school. I'm trying to run a karate school, right? There's a lot going on. So dialed in efficiency of training, probably better, more constructive than, you know, I train for 4 or 5 hours a day. All right, cool. Well, what'd you do during that 4 or 5 hours?
Exactly.
You know? Got more out of that. Back to your question though. Yes, because I thought at the time, and this is just me being 100% transparent, Marcel's basics, stances, foundation, and everything were better than mine. So I had to get myself up to the level that he was at during the sync form, which thus helped me transition into what I did in the extreme forms afterward, even into the sword, right? As far as, all right, let me dial in my footwork the way this guy's got it dialed in, because he's doing something right. So absolutely, from my point of view, it helped me tremendously on the individual side of things.
Yeah, and the same. I mean, when we get to that dialed in part, you know, the team sync, and we're holding each other accountable. You know, we obviously have parts just like you guys, you know, in the section where we might not be facing each other. We might be facing away, or even if we're facing the same direction, because we're looking at our target, our technique, we don't see what the other person's doing. And I just, you know, love how, you know, to Kalman's point, we do, you know, one section once, twice, and then we would do it a third time into the next section. We worked on that transitions, right? Those transitions. And then like, hey man, I messed up. It's like, you know, or, you know, where was your hand on this move? It was here. Okay, mine wasn't there. So let's do it again. Like that, when you have that level of discipline and accountability and trust, you know, you're at peace with your process. You know, you know, these talk about being vulnerable in, you know, relationships. Like, let me tell my teammate that I think I did it wrong. Let me tell him that I think I did it right, but I'm not quite sure. You know, when you know, show that you're vulnerable with each other to the point, like 100% honesty, truth, and transparency. Don't, you know, mix it, right? Kalman's point, whether it be verbal or nonverbal. Okay, you know, I need to get my stance like that. I mean, you don't have to beat yourself up. He's not saying my stance is good. He's not saying his stance sucks. He just makes a statement. He needs to get it like that. And I'll do the same. I need to get it like this, you know? And then when you know, see him putting together his individual routine, you're like, ooh, nice, right? Or I'm coming up with ideas the same way I might come up with an idea in the team sync. That doesn't change. Hey, I have this idea for my own individual form. What are your thoughts? Because if I'm asking him his thoughts in the team sync, and I'm asking because I need to humble myself, and we need to meet each other at the same level. And phrasing is very important. You guys know I'm all about the vocabulary. Like I didn't say he needs to meet me where I'm at, right? That's not a humble statement. We need to meet each other at the same level, right? So that's not above or below. And definitely, you know, would ask for thoughts and feedback on your individual form when you have a team sync that is so cohesive and, you know, on point. Like, why would you not ask? Why would we not train? You do your section, I'll do mine, et cetera, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
It's cool.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of us too. And, you know, the process we're in and the stage we're in as well now. I feel like we've gotten to a position where we're a little bit more mature as competitors. And so we take our training differently, you know, than we used to maybe. And then it's funny to see, you know, hear about the process of kind of, you know, just communication. And I want to make sure, you know, from my perspective, I'm working to be as good as him. You know, I want to get my stances or my basics ideally as good, or try to get better than him, so that he's also hopefully working to do the same thing. And we're both just pushing it up from there. But I tell students, sometimes I'll work with students who are working on a team sync form, and I tell them, I'm like, you cannot communicate enough. Like, talk about as much as you can, because there might be something in the back of your head that you're like, that doesn't really matter. He's probably doing it right, but he might not, and it's not the same at that point. And so now your sync form is incorrect. It's different. It's not the same moves. It's not the same techniques. And so I've been I've had some things that pop into the back of my head when we're working on sync, and I'm like, that's a dumb question. I shouldn't even ask it. And I'm just like, well, first of all, there are no dumb questions, right? I'm like, let me just ask it. Let me just see what's his perspective on it. And I could be completely off. And then he's got a completely different perspective. It might even be one simple technique that I'm throwing with a different intention than him, even if it looks almost the same. But then it's like, how is he going into that block? Like, what does he process as this technique is being thrown? Just so like there's nothing that's off mentally or then physically as well. And so that's really cool to see that, that perspective kind of rolling over into, I feel like at least where we're at when we're working on our sync. And then like you said, sometimes that just rolls over right into, hey, let's just run our sections. I was up at his house working some sync adjustments, and then we were like, we should just run some trad weapons, which that's another division where we don't directly compete against each other for divisions too. So it's not that we would be that way anyway, but it makes it a lot easier to analyze each other and kind of dive into the intricacies of it, because it's not something I'm going to be doing directly against you, maybe until the grand or something like that. But regardless, we're wanting to push each other forward and, ideally elevate the whole thing. So
no, yeah. To that point about the question thing, if any question that would result in you gaining more information than you previously had before asking it, that by definition makes it not a dumb question, right?
Right.
Even if it's a rhetorical question, right? If you ask a rhetorical question and then like the person you're asking it to, it's just like, I didn't think about it like that, or, no. So yeah, you can't have a dumb question, you just be dumb for keeping your mouth shut,
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, but wanted to do a little pivot here and kind of talk to a little bit more to Kalman directly as this applies. But your daughter has competed probably a few times now, but obviously competed last weekend as well. I'm interested on what is the coach/parent dynamic, whether that be in the studio training or just at home when conversation comes up about tournaments or performance and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. We got her in karate. I think she was 4 when we got her, and she's 10 now. And when we started out, and we started kind of down the competition road, getting the sword in her hand. That's what she wanted to do. I didn't force that upon her. She wanted to do sword.
Sure.
All that stuff, right? I mean, I couldn't tell her anything that was correct. I mean, I knew nothing. From her standpoint at first.
Geez, Dad, what you're talking about.
You can't be a prophet in your own town. But I think it was Carolyn that her mom had to show her some YouTube videos, and she's like, "Oh, maybe knows what he's talking about."
Yeah.
But anyway, no, it was very cool. Her first tournament was a she goes to the karate dojo, dojo schools here in Atlanta. Great schools. And she her first tournament was an inter-school tournament that they were holding, right? They've got 10 or so different schools, and it's actually a pretty big event, given the amount of schools they have, the amount of kids competing. And she did her sword form for the first time. I mean, Marcel was there, and it was very cool to see. Definitely puts you in a different seat than if you're competing yourself. You realize the lack of control that you've got once they're out there, right? So, you're just sitting there, and it's just a weird thing, right? Because yes, you're nervous, like you're competing yourself, but in a sense, you're in control, of what you're doing at the point, and you're nervous. You got adrenaline or whatever. As a parent watching, you're nervous. You have adrenaline. You no control. You have no idea what's going to happen when they get out there, right? I mean, it's just like, please just remember your form. But no, she did great. Very proud moment. Marcel even mentioned like it's got to be pretty surreal, pretty great moment to see kind of everything come full circle, right?
Yeah.
Where now you got this 7-8-year-old little girl and your daughter, and she's competing or whatever. So yeah. It's what makes life, right? I mean, it's just amazing how life progresses and moves forward. And so being able to kind of share that with her is pretty cool. And this past weekend, you know, she's been doing good in the underbelts and everything, but it's like, all right, you know, we gotta move up to the, you know, the big leagues. And she did well, represented herself well, forms were good and everything. And we'll see where it goes. You know, she has some other passions too that she wants to pursue and everything. Getting a black belt is something that, you know, will be done. I think that's important. That teaches us, our kids, to, all right, you know, we started something, we started on a journey, on a goal, we're going to complete this goal, right? Tournament karate, sport karate is a little bit more open-ended, right? I mean, it's like, what's the mindset here? What's the goal? What do we want to accomplish with this, right? That's a little bit more individual, and whatever, and that comes down to her, right, as her own person, you know, kind of being like, hey, do I want to put the effort, time into this, etc. But as parents, right, if, you know, we've got to be able to nurture our kids and support them in what they want to do, right? I mean, you know, because I've competed for 20 plus years and everything, doesn't always mean it's going to be her thing, or she might not have the same passion or whatever. So also having to kind of step back and realize that, and, you know, kind of help nurture her other goals and everything that she wants to do in life too, is, you know, just kind of maturity that we as parents kind of have to take on. So, but seeing her compete and everything, I mean, it's very cool. And, you know, life, again, to my point, life goes by quick, right? So soaking those moments in and everything is super important.
Super cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool to hear. Wish her the best in her journey and getting a black belt, and yeah, excited for her. So
sure, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Battle of Atlanta was also my first tournament, and I was 10. So, and I still remember. I mean, going to Battle of Atlanta every year is always super special, just because it was my first tournament, and that was my first time getting exposed to everything. The fights, forms, weapons, all of it, even the night show, and just seeing everything going down in the night show. Competitors like Raymond Daniels still fighting at the time, like Jack Felton, and seeing team fights and forms and weapons competitors like Caitlin Deschelle was still competing. Reed, Presley, Jackson. There's so many names that I'll probably forget if I'm just gonna. So I'll just leave it at that. But for you guys, you know, when you first went to NASCA tournaments and when you got exposed, like, who were some of the people that you guys looked up to growing up that, you know, you took inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, see, my first turn was Battle Atlanta, 1991. You know, I mean, that was I remember not staying for the night show. My mom did. I remember not staying for the night show. I mean, I was, you know, as a 6-year-old, full day tournament, I was probably mentally cooked at that point. But so she stayed. But I remember getting a VHS of that tournament and seeing the night show, watching the night show on VHS. Man, I'd watched that so many times. You know, even as a kid, you're like, God, it was a dumb move. I wish I would have stayed and watched this thing. But, you know, competitors like, you know, Michael Bernardo, Kim Do, back in the day, doing, you know, opening up the form, boom, you know, 12 o'clock side kick with one leg, 12 o'clock side kick with the other leg, you know, things like that back in the day. I mean, that was huge, you know, wearing the sequin uniform, you know, I mean, looking like these guys have just, you know, transcended into superhero status. Watching that as a kid, you know, really, you know, is pretty heavy, makes a pretty heavy impact on, like, oh man, I want to be doing that one day or whatever. But I mean, I think seeing competitors also too later on, when you get a little bit smarter in the league and everything, is about, like, you know, what's what. I mean, names, Carmichael Simon is one, you know, I mean, these guys made, you know, laid the foundation for CMX forms. You know, Carmichael Simon, you know, Michael Chatterata, but John Valera, you know, on the weapons side of things. Even I got to compete with her for a while too. You know, I mean, Casey Marks, David Douglas. I mean, like you said earlier, I'm gonna, you know, forget about names because there's a lot of them. But you know, I remember in 1999, Diamonds, you know, it was John Valera's last tournament. And I remember kind of the way he went, you know, the way he finished his career in sport karate. He's pretty young too. I mean, I don't think he was more than 24, 25 years old. You know, I stopped when I was 26, but that's relatively young as far as, you know, how your body feels and everything like that, right? Depending on how well you took care of yourself. But I mean, you know, him, just that whole moment of how he closed his career out, you know, and the way that he did it, going back up on stage later. I don't know if it was just a special speech that he was able to make or because they inducted him in the Diamond Athletes Hall of Fame, but being able for him to thank his parents for all that they did for him to allow him, you know, give their time, their finances, their resources and everything to get him to these tournaments or whatnot. I'm like, man, that's, you know, so literally from that point to 2011, especially kind of closer to that time to where I was like, all right, you know, I'm going to be moving on to other things that I want to pursue in life and that I need to focus on in life. It was like, all right, I visualized a moment like that try to visualize a moment like that for myself. Right. And I mean, you know, what we visualize and what we're able to try to manifest is pretty powerful and you know, you can make it happen. Right. But without necessarily those guys being able to look up to those guys or whatever, and seeing that groundwork and that foundation that they were able to lay, you know, I mean, who's to say what my mindset would have been or whatever. Right. I mean, but it goes back to seeing forms that we look at it now and someone sees that and they might not be able to appreciate it because it's so simplistic. But was it really simplistic? No, because how John Valera, for example, was able to transition into and out of certain things, right? How he was able to go from a fast, explosive technique to something slow and smooth and then go bam, 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 right? I mean, you look at that and you appreciate that so much, and by itself, it was enough, right? And that's what I try to keep getting back to for today's competitors, right? Is, you know, it can be something very simple, but to make it look special, that's the key, right? John Valera said, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. Every person I've ever taught, ever coached, ever, I've said that to, right? Mike Chad, the way he would kick, you know, I mean, hadn't seen anything like it since. Sorry to anybody, but hadn't seen anything like it since. Carmichael Simon, 1994 Battle of Atlanta, first pop 720 in a division, in a tournament. I had seen him doing it, you know, off to the side at tournaments, you know, or whatever, but pop 720, I mean, that thing looked like he jumped up and spun around 10 times and did a hook kick at the times, right? I mean, people went nuts in a Georgia Dome where half of the Georgia Dome is filled with people watching the night show, right? I mean, you remember that stuff, but it stood out because of how he set it up, the way he did it, the way he transitioned out of it, things like that. Those are the reasons why I mentioned some of those names and what I remember and what inspired me. But
yeah, I'll add to that list. So yeah, obviously the adults, you know, that came before us, as he articulated. I'll say I can't get in the minds of people in today's generation or other people outside of me, but I do feel like, or I know because of conversation with Kalman and other people, we were inspired by our fellow competitors too. And when I say inspired, I mean legitimately inspired, you know, and I think because I do have, you know, a plethora of students, not just competing now, but over the last 10 to 15 years, where obviously I know what they were thinking. I know how they were feeling. I know how they feel about their fellow contemporaries. Like, you know, I don't know if that same admiration and affection is there and inspiration to fellow competitors. Like we get beat, getting fourth or fifth. We were like, hey, that's pretty good compared to Jimmy Pham, getting first. Now you get people nowadays getting second and they're throwing a conniption fit, as if the person that won like is not worth anything. So Jimmy Pham was a big inspiration. The Guy Burkett, I remember when he did round off full down the middle. You're like, the rings were much smaller when we were competing than they are now. And to your point, there was ballroom carpet. There was, concrete with the carpet tarp. There was some terms just concrete. And to have someone in a 14, 15-year-old division do a round off full straight down the middle towards the judges, like that was like, what? There's no, lollygagging 2-3 steps round off to the corner. They are power hurdle down, right? Or a B twist split, and we actually see a split, that flexibility. You see a Kim Do kicking straight up on both sides. You see multiple youth male competitors doing great kicks. You see Mike Chaturanga doing those kicks. You're like, man, that's big inspiration. And to his point, like, haven't seen anybody do some of these things since. And it's not doing the move, it's the way they do. We've not seen it done that way since, right? And big inspiration. You can't help but be motivated and inspired to do the same, if not better, right? Because you're being inspired by your fellow competitor. So if you meet them where they're at, there's no guarantee you're going to beat them. So that energizer, battery in your back, like, okay, let me do a cheat 720 like I just saw Carmichael Simon do, right? He did a hook kick, and that thing is, going across. So the judges are literally judging this extreme element like a traditional martial arts move, and he's performing it like that. And then to your, what you mentioned earlier, Dawson, investing in those DVDs and VHSs, you see the David Douglas videos, you see kicking on the paddles and the pork chops. These are hook kicks, right? And, you hear that pop, that sound. And so when we go to a NASCAR tournament and the center ref is not just a judge and people didn't know their name, that center ref is a tournament promoter. And then next thing you know, that center ref is actually the head instructor at your school. That center ref tested you for your black belt or sat on your black belt panel. You just can't help but put the right amount of mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional discipline into work ethic and just like go through the roof, just like the see Jimmy Pham do hook aerial. And you see how fast that is. You're like, wow, it's just aerials, but you look at people's aerials today, toes aren't pointed, but they were pointed 25 years ago. You see people's, 540 split today, back leg's not straight, but you had people doing B twist split, not putting the hands on the ground, landing wushu style. And so we were inspired comprehensively, to see Casey with that bow, consistent speed, consistent time, and consistent execution, performance, so I want to throw in some youth names in there.
Yeah. And I mean, there's absolutely different tiers of what, I think that you've got what we looked up to, right? And then like what Marcel said, what inspired us, right, to make ourselves better, right? I mean, even in the sync divisions, I mean, we're going against, Daniel Sterling, Matt Emick. I mean, just, Casey and Lauren. Then we're going against Rudy and Steve, right? All of us together. I mean, that's 8 competitors that in their own right, and the individuals can hold their own, but I mean, they're in a sync division, right? So, I mean, it's like, the amount of, just freedom and fun within that division, because everybody's just so dang good that you didn't put, I'm not going to speak for Marcel on this, but you didn't put the pressure on yourself about a first place. You had such a sense of freedom before your performance, because you were like, oh crap. I mean, they're so good. Anybody can win at this point, right? Who's going to get the 999? I mean, there were times they were giving out more 10s too. But I mean, like who, it's like, we can't look at the scores. We can't think about first place. It's a matter of, showing up, like I said earlier, locking in and doing the best you can in that moment. Right. And the colleagues that we competed against at the time, the Mark Canizatos, the Matt Emmings in my later day or whatnot, that inspired you to work harder yourself, right? And be like, man, I mean, like and you had a sense of appreciation for those competitors because you're in it with them, right? You looked up to the people who came before you. The appreciation's a little bit different. You appreciate it, but here you're in the trenches with these people, right? So it's like the appreciation for the level of difficulty where we were in that point of time made you respect those individuals. And because you respected those individuals, don't get me wrong, you didn't look at it as a point to like, oh man, I wish I was where they were. No, we were all there.
Yeah.
So you can't look at it as a point of like, oh, I'm not worthy. It's a point of inspiring yourself to keep pushing harder at the next tournament, right? What am I going to do next tournament that's a little bit better, right? Because they're doing the same thing, or they might come out with the next rendition of this move or that move or whatever, and you appreciated that. And you never slept on anybody, right? So yeah.
What I want to cap it on to his point, we didn't act like we were inferior, to them. It's literal inspiration, motivation, right? We were capable. You guys remember me saying this a few years ago, when we call that Sermon on the Mount, at the battle. I made a comment, and I think it's true for this generation from my perspective. This is my truth. There's a level of arrogance that is present, but a lack of confidence. And, and I'll explain what that means because it seems like it's contradictory, right? So, we might look at a Carmichael Simon and see that 720. You are inspired, like, wow, that's net new. Or you see somebody's 540 or jackknife, and you're like, that's doing damage, okay? And so we were motivated and inspired to get that move, but I don't believe at any point in time there was like, we got it better than them. You know what I'm saying? You know what? The second I do 2 spins, even if my kick sucks, I'm going to throw it in my form. That's an arrogant approach to it, right? To where like, so we see somebody, Dawson, you have very unique sword moves. Ben, you have very unique bow moves, right? And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be shared and, fellowship with others, taught, learned, performed. But imagine you come out with something the first term of the year, AKA, and then 4 people are doing that move the next tournament. Probably somebody doesn't have it down as well as you did in January because you probably worked at it 6 or 8 months. So that's where I'm saying there's a little bit of an arrogant approach to like, my competition did a thing against me and they beat me with it. I'm going to do the same thing and beat me with it. That's an arrogant approach. And so they've got that cup runneth over right now, in my opinion. But the lack of confidence is what he said as far as, what can I do to be a little bit better? Where's the person that's like, let me make that stance a little bit deeper. Don't change the stances. Don't change your choreo. Don't change your form, right? You trained at that. If you have confidence, if you trust your discipline, keep the form the same, AKA, and get better before compete with the same moves, right? What can I do to make that bow move a little faster? Don't change it. What can I do to make my cut a little fuller with my 7 cut on the comma? Don't change the choreography. What can I do to jump a little higher? Do some plyos, do non-martial art training, train the body, right? And so I want to give that. And then to a point as far as training, like I was, to have somebody that you look up to at the highest level, and then you become, really, really good friends, and then you keep that same motivation. So like I was kicking pads and doing, hand sections with Carmichael just, last month. Right. And that was dope because number one, just that black belt juice, right? Just, you love the sport karate. You just wash, rinse, repeat, but then it's like, I'm not going to say that something inspired me at a point in time. No, this was a lifetime inspiration, right? So we'll pull out those pork chop paddles. You know what I'm saying? Let's drill 1, 2, 3. These hands. And so I just want to like put that out there. Like if you have a motivation and inspiration, like it's your responsibility as an individual to keep that light on, keep that fire burning, and then definitely find the little things to be better at. Don't find every little thing to change and do differently, and because you're going to stop yourself from being consistent. And that is an essential component to life. Being consistent with study helps you become, consistent with learning, becomes consistent with, application in the workforce or in education, right? And so, just, find that little thing to do better, but don't find those little things to keep doing different, because then you don't have that individuality, right? It doesn't stand out.
Yeah, kind of comes back to like, it's not what you do, but how you do it. Like, don't just copy the winner. Take what you're doing, because you're probably doing it for a reason, not because this person's doing it, because you're good at it or you like it or whatever it is. Yeah. So make it better, I've seen that perspective come up. So it's exactly what you're saying. I've seen where, I'll come out with a new bow catch or something like that. A tournament or two later, there's a lot of people doing it. And I think it's cool to see juniors doing it and put in their twist on it too. When you see them do not exactly what you're doing, but the concept of what you did and make it their own, to me, that is super, super cool. And I'm always going to be encouraging towards that. When I think it's kind of wild is when it's a adult male competitor doing exactly how I do it. And I'm like, that's the move that I like made up. Like, that's the move that I worked on to nail. And you're going to try to do it. Like, you're probably not going to do it, not from an arrogant perspective, but as good as I would if I'm the one who like made it up and took all the time to make it what it is. And so that perspective.
Let me give you a phrase, if you don't mind the interruption, to your point, like not to, maybe rephrasing is not do it as good. You won't do it the same.
Right.
Right. And so the same doesn't have an emotional context to it, good or bad. You won't do it the same. And so if you were like, I know it's not the same, Marcel, that's why I'm doing it, because I'm doing it my own way. It's like, no. By doing the same move, you are making it easier to not be different, right? And so if you do the same move, and let's say you do it the exact same way as Ben, where's your individuality? Where's your creativity? If we're judging CMX, the C stands for creative. That category or attribute doesn't go out the door because it's musical. You still need to be creative and musical. That attribute, that judging element doesn't go out the door just because you do extreme. And so if I see anybody, John Doe, Jane Doe, do a move, and then coming up, I see the same move, watch, rinse, repeat 5 times, I'm like, there's no creativity here. And then now I'm looking at the execution, the how you do. And if Ben Jones is doing this signature move a certain way, let's just go ahead and say, I knew he did it first. It's going to probably look better executed by Ben, right? And you're just making it that much easier for Ben to stand out positively and for you to stand out negatively,
But we can have a whole other podcast on mentality, but that's where you know you are winning the mental warfare, right? It's like, all right, they're trying to duplicate maybe what I'm doing. And it's not an arrogance thing. It's just you are at peace. Marcel said it earlier, you're at peace with what you're doing and you're only building upon that, rather than another competitor maybe duplicating and they're chasing, right? It's an unsettling point as a competitor to be chasing, figuring it out. Not chasing in a sense of like, oh man, this is the person, man, I got to go stronger, faster, right? Not chasing in that sense, but chasing in what the identity is, right? So there's a piece in identity. And at that point, you've won the mental warfare, which is the most important part of it, right? I should have stopped doing round off flash kicks corner to corner a long time ago facing Mark Canizzato, because it was never as good as his. That was just stupid. Right?
We've been having many conversations
right. His was always higher, better, and I just, at one point I was like, I'm just going to stop doing this because it's his better. Right. So,
that
doesn't make you again, it doesn't make you inferior to that person. Everyone's got a different skill set. Everybody's body's built differently. Everybody, does athleticism in a different way. You have to frame. You got to create a groove and create a lane, and then just go deeper and deeper and deeper into it.
Love it. Very good.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I appreciate that perspective for sure. So you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier when we talked about inspiration and Kalman. You said how John Valera, like how he went out, like that stood out to you, right? Then I would say, me coming in at a later time, by the time I started competing, you had already retired. But with Jackson as my coach, he really drove the concept in my head to know the history, watch the past of what the sport has been. So you can see kind of where it's came from, where it is now, and where it could potentially go from there. And so one thing that I've always told everybody is kind of like a staple video you have to watch is the 2011 retirement form. Obviously, there's the aspect of it's blindfolded, but then the big emotional side of it at the end too. You could see how much was put behind that. It wasn't just a physical side of I got to do a form. There was a lot more to it. You could just tell, especially off the ending. And I love that the main video you can find of that, it lets that play out. And I'm so glad it doesn't cut it off right away, because you can see how much really goes into that type of a performance. Whatever you're willing to share on the process of going into Diamond Nationals that year, the form itself, what happened after, any little nuggets that you're willing to give us. I know me and Dawson would definitely appreciate it. I'm sure everybody watching would love to hear about it as well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad they didn't cut the video off. I really hammed it up there. I was like, it's the last time I'm be on the stage. I got to stay out here as long as I can. But no, yeah, it's a one and done at that point, right? I mean, it's not, it didn't end the way I wanted to, 2012, didn't feel good about 2011, 2012. Let's go a couple more, it's a decision, right? And if it goes with other things in life, right? I mean, you have to really be, I think, disciplined on decision. That doesn't mean you have to change, or that doesn't mean you can't change or alter or adjust, right? But you gotta just don't be wishy-washy, right? So yeah, leading up to that, I mean, backing up even before that, I mean, the whole concept of double sword, I mean, I prepared for a long time for that, right? To try to get this left arm, with the, somewhat good with the right arm, and the timing and everything like that. And it had a different flow. It had a different feel to it with single sword. I mean, Marcel will tell you this day, I mean, being able to maybe giving myself the opportunity to do some single sword stuff up on stage, to show kind of a little bit more of the speed, pace, and cadence of it compared to double sword, right? It's different. I mean, it's just faster and sharper in some elements or whatever. But I remember in 2007, for a lot of 2007, I was trying to prep for this double sword thing, right? And I remember Carolyn was like, "Are you sure you want to, do that?" And I'm like, "Hey, look, again, it goes back to let's try to be different. Let's try to do something people are going to remember. It could go either really good or really bad." First term, it was Diamonds 2007. It was I mean, I think it was just, the aura and the thing of the form and two swords and this and that. It was great. But, if you really kind of, pick that form apart, it was good, but it needed a lot of room for improvement. So at that point, the next 3-4 years, really dialing that in and getting that to look as natural as 2 commas was the key, right? So then we have, all right, it's coming up last year, 2011. Diamonds is going to be the last tournament. It's like, all right, I want to do it blindfold. I have my own reasons of also wanting to do it blindfold that I don't want to get into, as some more personal reasons for my own, just wiping something out reasons. But from a outward thing, I was like, all right, we're going to do this. And so when I trained, it really helped to dial in consistency, because everything's based off of timing. Whether you're doing a release or a trick, everything's based off of timing. The way you are able to do releases, Ben, in your bow form, just clickety clack, 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 clack. I mean, Am I wrong if I'm saying that there's not a certain timing involved on each release?
No,
When I work with students on sword tosses or whatever, I'm like, look, every half revolution that it makes is a count in your head, right? So if you do a full revolution, you're counting 1, 2, catch, right? 1, 2, catch. Everything's a timing thing, right? So really being able to dial that in and then take that and be like, all right, if I can create consistent timing, I can do this blindfold. Also, if you look at other forms that I did, I mean, the releases were dumbed down a little bit. I mean, you know, I'm not doing double releases or anything like that. That wasn't consistent enough. Could catch it sometimes, not catch it sometimes, right? Everything was a little bit closer, you know, beside the one at the end. Everything was a little bit closer or whatever, right? So it was all about timing. And I remember when I was training, it was funny, you know, in our gym that we had at the time for our karate school, you know, at night you turn off the lights. I mean, it would be pitch black in there. So it didn't matter if you had a blindfold or not on, you couldn't see squat, right? So I would kind of start with that, turn off all the lights and just go, right? Hit myself in the head and all this stuff, right? But it really comes down to, again, being consistent. And now I can, and again, I'm not trying to, you know, brag or anything, but I can still pull out those moves in that form like this, just because of that timing is so integrated. I mean, I worked on that for, you know, months leading up to that. But that also helps to make you consistent from one turn to the next, right? Let's talk about tournaments. There's how many World Tour tournaments now? 12, 11, 12?
12.
Yeah, right? Okay. It's a journey, right? From one year to the next, it's a journey, right? How do you stay consistent? How do you stay on top from one tournament to the next, right? It's about developing consistent timing, cadence, rhythm, right? All these things and everything. And that helped me with being able to dial that in enough for the last form, for the blindfolded form, you know? Again, I wanted to make it memorable. I told someone earlier, I told a student earlier today, people aren't going to remember they're going to remember you won a lot. They're not going to remember how many first place you won, right? Necessarily. They're going to remember the performances and how it made them feel, right? How do people feel when Marcel was out there banging out these creative forms that were beating CMX forms and other things like that, because they felt the techniques in them, the cleanliness, and the resolute just nature of the form. I mean, you can't argue, right? So I just wanted people to remember forms that I did, remember that one. And again, it had to be something absolute because it was the end. And so again, I was at such peace going into that, because it was like, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, it does, because we're competitive and we all want to win and we don't want to mess up and drop the sword or whatever, right? It doesn't, you know, but I was at such peace because it was like, all right, here it is. All this you've done for the past 20 years in competition has led up to this. You've earned this. You deserve this. Whether it's win or lose, you just go out there and do it. And especially that was the mindset, because I had to go up first. I drew, you know, you draw, right? So I had to go up first out of 6 people, right? So I'm like, oh God, you know, I'm going to be like, it's going to be one of those things where I'm going to try to create this moment and people are still going to be chatting it up because of the transition of the divisions and everything. So it's like, all right, I gotta grab attention, you know, going first up and everything like that. But I was at just such peace with the whole moment, you know, luckily. And, you know, the form turned out well. And, you know, I mean, there it is. My mom was able to be there for the last one, of course, the family and everything like that. But it was a good night.
That's awesome.
I know you guys thought he can still do the same moves. It's not bragging. He's just a black belt. He's just dope.
Yeah. Yeah, I was always curious about that. And I heard through the grapevine that, you know, how you trained for it was turning off all the lights. And I think it was Jackson who told me that. And that's what he opened up to me about his training, you know, or his routine. His process getting ready for a night show was training in the dark. So that's what I started doing, is to understand, right, the timing of throwing a blade in the air, right, and, you know, also hitting myself as well. But yeah, it goes it's a lot of strategy that goes into, a form, and especially tricks. Um, so Marcel, my question to you is, we mentioned Kalman just briefly talked about, your creative forms and how memorable it was and how you used to beat people's extreme forms. And I think for me, the form of all creative forms is the Charlie Nationals form in '07 on a, ballroom carpet, of course. And I think, or seeing other forms, was it three people in the division? Is what I
You said
remember seeing.
3 people in
Was
the
it three?
division.
Yeah, because I think I
Yeah.
saw. I mean, the only people I saw on YouTube was you. You had Emig in there, and Vince Johnson. Is that
No,
correct?
it was a lot of people in the
Yeah, it
division.
was.
I mean, double digits for sure. You had
So
Mark, you had Matt, Mark, me, Vince. You had Josh Kahn,
yeah,
aka. You had, other, regular, competitors, that were there. So I was going to say, the next tournament, Ocean State was a little bit more difficult. Steve wasn't in Charlie 2007, but he was at Ocean State tournament right after that. So, you know,
yeah,
it was dense for sure.
yeah. So okay, so that was just a regular
Hans, who was jumping
Hans.
up and down, like, he
Yeah.
competed in that one. So yeah, creme de la creme.
So it was just a regular creative division, just
Regular
creative
creative
forms.
division.
Gotcha. Okay, I didn't
Yep.
know if it was an overall grands or just
No, and the
I
thing
didn't know
is,
what it
what you
was.
may have seen in that same ring later in the day, they did the men's runoffs, right? So I did the same form, but I did like 540 to the knee in the beginning of the grand. So that exact same ring, Matt, myself, and like maybe one or two other people did the runoffs, to determine our order. So that may have been a confusing element, if you're just spectating from afar.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so thank you for that info because
Sure.
I just didn't know like how things were ran back then. Like, yes, okay, so it's just a regular creative division, but
Mhm.
it was just a regular creative division, and you had everyone surrounded in that ring, and just the energy was different too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted you to just talk about that moment because I heard I may have asked you this question, but it was Jacob Pinto who told me that about that whole story of your I think you went after Matt and he just gave you a little pat on the shoulder as your back was turned to him and everything, and so you did your thing, and then you just showed up, showed out, and crush, kill, destroyed. Did
Mm.
your own thing. And looking at the three forms, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but the three forms, it goes back to what you guys have been talking about, is everyone was different,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, talk about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, Charlie was a great tournament to have on the circuit. You guys have your monumental, U.S. Open still, pivotal, pinnacle tournament, aka not just for the tournament, but the Warrior Cup. So Charlie was just, that tournament. Charlie himself is a great, martial artist, and when the cloth he was cut from, and the other students, Charlie, trained Carmichael Simon privately, right? And so so him as an individual, his tournament, being the first one to do the tricking competition, and Kalman taking that, it's just a fantastic tournament. Creative was a little new. Well, not so much. I mean, they did an 0405, but yeah. But the thing is, you had your Extreme and Musicals Friday night. And so Saturday was reserved for open hand forms and open hand creative, right? So you had people that still had, a good amount of energy, and physical fortitude to compete Saturday, and make another run at that CMX, runoff, right? And so a lot of people competed in creative in our generation because you didn't have the back to back to back like they do right now. Friday, There was no Korean challenge, no traditional challenge. They didn't have weapons separated at that time by bladed, unbladed, So, Saturday morning, somebody's going to come correct. Matt Emick, fantastic martial artist, right? That may have been his first or second year in adult. I think it was first. So he was coming, and Vince, super creative. But like Kalman was talking about, like with Mark C, he's like, I'm gonna stop doing round off flash against Mark. It's not that he has a bad one; he does not. He has a great one, but I'm not going to do it against Mark Canizzato because there's an appreciation, right, and a truth that exists, and his is consistently at a certain height. His is consistently higher than everyone's all the time, right? Or you may have one or two people that meet him where he's at, and that one person, Steve Serrata, consistently high, triple, quad, switch flash, right? And so for me, it's like there's not so much individuality you could have at that time. I think it's not for creative, but except for the speed, power, intensity, technique, your physical attributes were the things that stood out. So you got to punch faster or strike faster, right? You've got to jump higher, than other people or everyone. So I'm wanting to put together a form where I just buckled down in each individual move. I had it my absolute best. I'm not going to compare it to other people's, but for me, my butterfly, I'm going to make that thing smooth, point those toes. My illusion, I'm going to try not to travel across at all. I'm going to go up, down. I'm going to do stall front kick, and I'm going to stall hold. I just wanted each individual move to be my absolute best because, people are bringing it. You know what I'm saying? Vince is going to be fast. It's just how fast is he going to be? Matt is going to be clean. It's about how clean and creative is he going to be compared to you being clean and creative. So that was a dope division. And, loop kicks was out there, which is why you had the Daniel Grahams and the knees, right? And Jimmy Marina sitting, stateside. So those guys were competing. Daniel did, he competed in that division. I know he did extreme the night before. He might, I don't know if he did creative, may have not, Hans. And like, we're all friends, close friends, so. And Daniel Sterling was spectating, but not, participating. You had Marco Johnson, who was there watching as well. I mean, it was a lot of people, man. And great energy, great form. Nuts. And then when you think about it, people nowadays are like heavy on like scores. Like I remember judging the past five of Atlanta. Like, are we going to give this number, because we have this many competitors, this one? And I was like, I'm not going to give more than 2 6s. I'm not going to give more than 2 5s. Like, it'd be distinct, like, I'm just not going to do that. But especially if you have tournaments like the US Open that say, okay, who won grands? That's how you get the points for ISKA. But who got runner up? Right? If so, I'm going to give distinct scores for second, third, and fourth because they're going to ask who was second and third. If we've got Dawson and Ben in the grands because they've won multiple grands. Oh, you know what? We got extra TV time. Who's third? Well, that's why you need to give distinct 6s and 7s out, things like that. So I was going to say, like, to get straight 10s, that was dope. But the next tournament got straight 10s again because now you got Steve, you got Matt, you got Mark, you got me, you got whoever else. Some of these guys, you're not going to give them 3s and 4s. They don't deserve it. You're not going to give them 5s. They don't deserve it. So it's like somebody gets 9s. Like, what are you going to get? So, it was a dope time, man. Definitely pivotal for me. It solidified me doing creative a certain way, being consistent. I didn't care if you put out a quadruple corkscrew. I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to find areas, like Kalman said, to get a little bit better, just a little bit.
I mean, just wrap your head around. This is how stone cold this is, right? Wrap your head around person that goes before him, Matt Emick, just bangs out this form. People on the sides, if you look in the video, going nuts. I mean, back then they scored you as you went. So Matt Emick goes up, he gets 3 9.99s. All right, well, division's done, right? No, I mean, you know, there's still 10s. So, I mean, what's this guy's mindset, right? Maybe Marcel can elaborate on that at that moment when it's like, all right, hey, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for him. If I'd have been in those shoes, it'd been a sense of, again, going back to just perform, just you do you, and that's all you can control. And it must create a sense of freedom around it. But elaborate on a mindset of seeing the competitor before you go all nines. Well, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what Dawson was alluding to, you know, because I don't watch, you know, 2 or 3 competitors at least before I go. We always did this. We would go warm up our stuff. We did not warm up in the ring we're competing in. That's crazy. Why would I want to judge to see something 50,000 times, you know, and then they see it 50,001? So we're warming up other places, and then we're checking in what's the order, and then we're just keeping a clock. You know what I'm saying? There was no texting on mobile phones that quick, right? And so I have my back turned. I hear Matt, you know, do his form. I hear the crowd's reaction. I don't see the scores. I hear them when they get caught out, right? So to that point, man, there's a certain amount of faith and confidence that you have to have and trust, right? You know, and that faith, that substance of things hoped for, that evidence of things not seen or not yet seen. I didn't see his form, right? You know, the substance of things hoped for. I hope I do well, right? And the thing is, knowing that discipline, like one thing that I've been very consistent with for almost 20 years now, teaching my students, is, you know, trying to be as objective as possible, right? You know, because being subjective, you know, it's like, you know, it's my opinion, right? But a fact is that at any given time, Kalman's doing his form. He's the only person in the world doing that form. Somebody could, like we talked about earlier, do the same move Ben Jones did, but they're not Ben Jones. You are so special, right? You know, God made everybody as one individual. So for me, I respect Matt, right? But he's not me. Nobody else is me. So my focus isn't them. It's not about I don't care about them. It's not that I'm not concerned with them. My focus is not them. When I'm training, I'm looking in the mirror at myself. I'm looking at video footage of myself. And so that I went in there like, nobody is about to do the butterfly like you, Marcel, because you're doing it, right? These judges don't know the form you're about to do. They don't know how you're going to execute it. You need to go ahead and show them, you know? So the mentality was, you know, you didn't see what Matt did for a reason. You didn't see what Vince did for a reason. It's not that you don't care. It's because it's about what you do. You need to care about your form. You need to care about your execution. You know, I would love for every individual competitor, even you guys, to not watch your competition, even up to right before you go. Oh, they dropped the weapon, and you could drop yours too. So, you know, it's like, you know, focus on what you do. Love yourself, you know. There's a rest in peace, a former pastor named Miles Monroe, who had a sermon talked about, you know, in order to be the best in a relationship, you have to love being single. You know, if you don't like going to a restaurant by yourself, don't invite me, you know, go with you. You know, if you don't love the grind, you know, for yourself, by yourself, you're not going to love it with people. So, man, I love that stall front kick I was doing. And I just couldn't wait to do it. You know, I love the way I punch. I just couldn't wait to do it. I love pausing and sitting in that stance, you know what I'm saying? Because that's how I teach my students every day. Can't wait to, you know, back up my own words, my own discipline. You know, so that mindset was focus on yourself, respect others, appreciate others, fellowship with others before, during, and after, you know. But right now, it's just you. You're on this planet of 7+ billion people, and you're the only one about to do what you're about to do. If that doesn't motivate you and pump you up, you know, it's not about this sport, it's about you. You know what I'm saying? Like so that's what's going through my mind. When we would do Team Sync, there's nobody about to do this for them. Why? Because they're not us. It's not a good, bad, right? They're just not us. We're so unique, it's disgusting, you know? So that's what's going through my mind. And that's why I'm like, you know what? Mark's doing this flash kick this high, fantastic. What can I do as high? Split kick, and why would I, look down on that move? Do it as best as I can, find little ways to make it better, and boom. So now the judge sees me do a split kick here, sees Mark do a flash kick there. I'll leave it up to the judges to determine which one is more impressive. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I lost because I didn't trick. That's a good way of not being accountable. Or I won because I did a split kick. That's a way to be arrogant. Like, you're just unique and just perform.
That's awesome. I might have to clip that and just play it over and over in my head.
Please do. That'd be the David Goggins 2.0,
right? Right. Oh, I love it. Well, as we get into one of the last questions here, we're going to have, after this question, you guys will switch roles and become the interviewers from there. So I'll let you guys kind of think about, prep the questions as we go into the next one. Just a quick perspective from each of you. We're interested to know, obviously through the years, you've had the opportunity to work with really, really great competitors, great students, great people. Who are some of the people that you were training them, maybe in the process or even now looking back on it or currently still doing it, being like, this is fulfilling to be poured this into someone and have them really, really retain it and be so locked in and so committed? Do you have anyone specific through the years that has stood out, or even currently right now?
I'm going to throw this to you first.
Every single one of them, and the reason why is because, we are blessed with the talent that we were given. And if somebody else shows the same hunger, drive, passion that I showed back in the day, then, we need to be able to share that if we have the ability to share that. Right. But it goes back to being different. Every single person that I've worked with is different. Right. So because every single person is different, how can you meet them as a coach, as an instructor, to be able to pull the best out of them, right? Because I've worked with kids a lot on adults on sword, right? What worked for me in sword might not work for somebody else in the sword. How can we mature as a coach, as an instructor? How can we transcend as a coach and instructor to figure out, all right, what is best for this individual, right? What is going to pull out their best, right? And then also motivate them in the meantime to be able to, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, and teach him how to fish, and he can eat for a lifetime, right? How can we train them to where they can start thinking for themselves, right? I love when somebody comes to me and has a question on something, right? Be like, hey, I was thinking about this move or that move, or what do you think about this instead of that? That's not a disrespect thing. This is not, it's hey, what I'm saying is what goes. It's got to be a two-way street. I'm not the one doing the form. That individual is. It has to be about what gets them to the point to where they're confident, at peace before they go up, ready to go, finding their groove, etc. We help with that. And then if they can take it from there, you two gentlemen sitting right here, and now you're doing the same thing for the other generations too, is what it's all about, right? And then selfishly, that's how you can get people to remember you and your legacy and everything like that. But why shouldn't we be able to share that with others? Because eventually, I haven't done a double full in a while. I don't know if I can do it anymore, but I can teach somebody else how to do it, and they can do it, and then they can teach somebody else and everything like that. So I'm sorry to disappoint you with the answer, but it's tough to just put it on any individual. I say, selfishly, right, being able to work with my family was very special. Being able to work with Austin and Hunter Crane and Audrey and Carson Donahue, and then my daughter, right, has been very special. That's a connection that we shared as martial artists that will never leave us, no matter what we're doing in life. But trying to help every single student get to where they want to go. And then we can't get frustrated or whatever. If that person doesn't end up, going all the tournaments or doing the circuit or this and that, it's like, I poured this time into this person, this and that. Yes, you did. But, that was time well spent if they try to meet you and do the best they could in their training. or whatever. So, I mean, I remember a lot of the students that I've worked with. I remember all of them, right? Because as a coach then, especially if you're still competing, that only sharpens you even more, right? Don't be a hypocrite and correct these things in the students if you're not doing yourself, right? So it helps sharpen you even more. So I remember when the kids were 12, 13, 14 years old, we got them starting to do lessons at the karate school or whatever. So they can learn how to give back, you know, in a way to be able to, you know, show, teach, coach other kids what they've learned, and show appreciative nature and grace through that and everything. But it also made them sharper too, and kind of helped them dial in, because I mean, you know, if you're speaking it, thinking about it for someone else, you know, that only makes it more in the forefront of your mind for your own stuff, right? But every single one has made it worthwhile for me to try to share, you know, anything I could and get them to the point that they wanted to go. Now imagine you have the power and control to do something yourself. Now imagine if you're able to bring someone else up and have enough influence, have enough wisdom, whatever you want to call it, have enough patience, whatever you want to call it, to get that next person to the level that you're at, right? Because again, it goes down to a control thing. You're not in control when they get out there, right? You can only, you know, see what they're going to do with it. So
That's awesome.
I'll repeat for the most part the same. I don't want to call out one or two few students specifically by name and leave someone out. I will say that I love all my students, not I like to love. And, you know, I love to serve. What I will say is that what is very rewarding and fulfilling is when your students start to teach, is when your students start to give back. So if I'm talking to you, right, and you know, you in that category, like that's the confirmation, you know what I'm saying, of like how I feel. So, you know, you know, I've got students and we have students, it's unfortunate, you know, family members that are no longer with us. And so that's more of a reason why I don't want to call out any specific name of who's competing now. When you give to and give into and pour into another person, and then you see them reciprocate that and give to you as an instructor, you know, that they come to you with a question, they're seeking your wisdom, they're seeking your guidance, right? Man, that's a powerful tool that you have. And that's beyond influence, right? That's governance, right? And so when any and every student that has ever crossed that threshold into instruction, that's for me the most fulfilling, rewarding thing. That's what I like, right? I have students that I started teaching privately, they're like 10, 11. And then next thing you know, they started teaching someone that you guys are familiar with, right? Their first Fight 40 or B twist, or they taught them chop punch. And then they passed their student, their first or second private lesson student, to me or to a Kalman, because they saw, you know, we're still in it at a certain degree or intensity, you know, things of that nature. And I was like, man, that's awesome. And it was just like, and that student did 1 or 2 years in a row. You know, that student, nobody knows except for you guys, because we may have talked about it in personal conversation. It's like, man, that student's just as motivating and inspiring and rewarding as the current competitor, right? And so I think he's going back. That's why I really, really harp on the individuality. Because, man, when you aren't physically able to, if that comes to a point where you mentally don't have it in you to do a thing, or, you know, God forbid, you know what I'm saying, you don't exist anymore to do it. And you do not want to invest your time, energy, and effort into others, other people, other things, other interests that aren't primary, And so any and every student that has a primary focus, they put that focus into a plan of action and they put those plans into execution to hit a goal. I'm all board with that. And I would have to say all my students have done that to some degree, to some degree. And I want that to be the focus, moving forward.
Well said. No.
Woosah.
That's awesome. Very, very good. I'm going to clip that one too, and also just run it back right before I teach every day.
Amen.
But real quick though, I've always, maybe some people have gotten frustrated with me way in the past. I trained multiple kids in the same division, right? But again, it's not about, oh, this kid's got a chance, this kid doesn't, favoritism, this and that. Again, it's about why should I not disclose or why should I not share everything I can with individuals or whatnot? If y'all are in the same division, it's on you then at that point to battle it out, right? Yeah. But I'm not going to withhold information from individuals, right? So I've always had a pretty hard line in the sand, and that stuff is like, I don't know who's competing in what division, this and that. I'm going to pour into this individual because it's an individual, right? Now it's on them to step out in the ring and show up.
To that, very much so. And Jacob Pinto talks about this more often, than not get around him because he would talk about how he's like, man, my parents and Tyler Weaver's parents would be on the phone at the same time coordinating, travel to Georgia to train with the same person, be in the same division, or same ring working on a thing. Like they know what they're doing, but they were so focused on themselves. They didn't get, scared about that. And to what he just said, like, it's very important, man. Like, imagine any one of the students, because you said all your students, same like imagine not teaching any one of your students in the past, just one, because of the opinion of someone else that, you were taking from them or not giving them something. And so they were selfishly focused on that. Man, that's a rhetorical question because I don't want them to have to answer that one. You know what I'm saying? But it's just like, no, that's what I say, man, that we have students that don't have breath anymore. You're like, oh, but they compete against, little Johnny, little Jackie. Okay. I don't know what I would have done if somebody turned down, a request from me or my mom or my dad if I wanted to, learn. And I want to get better. I was seeking guidance and direction, and you didn't steer me in any direction. You've just put the stop sign in front of me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not about to do that to the world. I'm a martial art instructor, period. I teach people that want to learn, period. And so, yeah, just be different, but yeah, the individual.
That's awesome. Very good. Yeah. Cool, man. All right. Well, we'll switch it over. So the roles are going to change. So whoever's ready, whoever wants to dive in first, send something our way, and then we'll go from there.
So I thought about this. It's a two-part question. What is something that you would like to have changed or done differently in the sport karate, world? And this doesn't even ask just sport karate in general, right? Because it's a sport competition. What would you like done differently? And it could be, high or low. I guess that single part question, just what would you like done differently that's not taking place now?
I think something that I think about, and this is hard to know how to fix because I don't know everyone's perspective. But I think sometimes the focus of the events, I don't know from everyone's perspective, whether it's spectators, parents, competitors, promoters, whoever it may be, officials, judges, what is the focus of an event to make it successful? What determines that an event is successful? I don't know. I haven't picked enough people's brains on this. Um, but how do we determine, how an event goes? What are they kind of focusing on to see an eventual outcome of an event? Are we focusing on the competitors? Are we focusing on the spectator experience? Are we focusing on the outside world, trying to get more eyes on the sport? I know there's a lot of, areas that could go. Um, but that's something I want to kind of just, I think, pick some more people's brains on and maybe it's more of people who are running tournaments. It's what is your focus for that tournament? What's the purpose behind the event? Um, that's some insight I think I would just like to learn. And I feel like that could potentially bring up some good change in certain directions. And maybe, could go the opposite direction too. Not sure.
I mean, what would you, to you, to your point, what's a successful? Is it the amount of people that were there? Is it a full night show? Is it,
What's successful to you? I get not knowing what success is other people, but if you were asked, what's the definition of success and or what successful events have you participated in? What are those and why?
I feel like I could go a few different ways with that. Obviously, from a personal and from a competitor standpoint, I would want, all of the divisions to run smoothly for me to be able to execute, do my thing in terms of, me as a competitor. But I think a lot about what is the overall tournament experience. I feel like I want to have, a tournament, not that's well ran, but also that I feel like, I'm bought in and there's a purpose behind being there, whether that's there's different teaching opportunities, there's camps, there's seminars within that, so I can spread knowledge or have some fulfillment in that area. And then prestige behind an event. We talk about events like Warrior Cup, US Open, Diamond Nationals. Those are things that, people want to end up on top on in terms of result. But then I also shift the perspective of the result in the grand scheme of things eternally doesn't matter. And so it points me back to more of impact and I think reach and kind of like we talked about earlier, not looking for a win because that's not what people are really going to remember, but putting on a performance that maybe gives people a feeling and impacts people in a certain way to make them want to become a better person.
I think for the sport, I hope to keep it alive and to legitimize it in every way. Because like you can, I have friends that are not martial artists, and and when I meet new people and wherever I am, they ask what I do for a living, and and I tell them sport karate, they're not going to know what it is, so I have to explain that. So I would love to see sport karate on TV more. I would love to see more sponsorship opportunities for our sport as well. Um, and yeah, and just to, that we've been talking about this whole time of giving, right? And that's something that I've been more passionate about now just because I do want to keep this sport alive and I want it, especially forums, to look legit, right? And not, you know, to have the core martial arts in forms and not just, all tricks, right? So yeah, that would be my answer.
Before you go,
Yeah.
let me just throw out that here's something that I would like to see done different to give an answer to my own question when you don't need to chew the fat on this. I would like to see more compulsory elements in divisions, and I would like to see more divisions be compulsory. Compulsory means required or mandatory, right? So in Wushu, they have compulsory divisions, and so that's why everybody's Wushu form looks the same. You have to do a B twist element. You have to do a 540 hitting your foot. I would like to see more compulsory elements or moves in divisions. So we say creative unbladed. That's a required thing. It has to be creative, has to be unbladed. I would like to see a requirement of no less than a thing and no more than a thing, no more than 3 releases for the whole form. So we're going to get 3 top releases, no more than 4, double, no more than 3 double doubles, right? But like you can do but so much of the same thing. No more than 2 sections where you aren't doing a strike every 4 or 5 moves. So we're not spinning, 5 moves of spin, but there's not a strike. So 1, 2, boom, 3, 4. So I think if we had more specific compulsory maneuvers and compulsory divisions, we could have a more formal sport and we could have more platforms to present it at, because the Olympics have gymnastics and each individual element, every judge knows the name of, knows how it's to be executed, and they score them on performance and execution. So you guys are so super talented, and this generation is so dope. I think, hey, you have to do a 540 or a kicking element where you jump off one foot and land on the same one. And you have to, look at your target while doing so. So we're not going to be seeing those 540s, right? I think if we hold people to a standard and create one first before you hold them to it, I think that would allow old heads like us, allow you guys who are in it to package it and market it and advertise it in a way to where it be, hey, I do sport karate. Ooh, I saw that on, CBS Sports 2 years ago, Adrenaline. I saw that on ESPN2. I saw that on local access television, or a streaming thing. So I think in order to see it more, it has to do more, and we should be more stringent on what we require of our super talented athletes. That's it. But I want to throw that in there.
Oh, 100% agreed. Yeah, because I know in like the other league with traditional kata, I think it's WKF, like the judge, there's a technical scoring judge. There's, a judge that's judging something different within the form. So there's also that. So
ATA does it. Somebody judge hands, one judge kicks, one judge the whole thing. And that's why they don't do numbers. They have odd judges and they just point. This one points at who they like the hands. This one points who they like the kicks. It's done,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we're not contradicting ourselves saying everyone's got to do the same stuff from what we've just been talking about the last hour and a half. We've been talking about everyone's got to be different. You can still absolutely, but that gives more of a platform to show the difference of the level of difficulty and the intricacies within the techniques. Yeah. I mean, how many different ways is there to do a 540? A lot, right? So who's got the best version of that? You go back to gymnastics, like, this person is going to do a double somersault. Okay. Is that a double back tuck? Is that a double pike? Is that a double layout? Is that a full in? Is that a full in double? I mean, right? So now you have tiers within that. You have subcategories, sub-tiers within that category of that element, right? Mm-hmm. That will help make the make the judging a little bit more consistent to where now you're getting into more of a code of points type thing, right? I mean, again, there's a lot of difference of opinions on that. It's not good. It is good, right? And whatever, but, consistency. Yeah. But so everything's a teachable moment, right? What is being kind of, you guys being at the top of what you're doing now? A lot of tournaments happening, some back to back, less than 2 weeks apart, hence Battle Atlanta right in the U.S. Open. What is your mindset now as adults, preparing for a tournament, training, but also doing other things in life, whether it be finishing up school, running a karate school, et cetera, right? Coaching, teaching. What's your mindset of preparation? How do you go about that now versus maybe when you were in the youth divisions? And just kind of compare and contrast.
Yeah, I think balance is huge, especially when, adulting happens and responsibilities come up and, you've got to pave out, the rest of your life. And it's a pivotal moment in time, But wanting to still be 100% bought in on the competition while I still feel like I'm in my physical prime and be able to capitalize on that opportunity, the balance has become, I don't want to say heavy, but highly important, because I feel like I definitely don't want to burn out. And so I don't want to just, go so hard on this, because I know I'm in a state of life where this can be like my career and my focus. And so I don't want to go in too hard, too heavy and burn out, but I want to make sure that I'm pushing it so that I'm capitalizing on the opportunity of where I'm at in this stage of life. And so balancing in, like you guys talked about, the efficiency of training has been super, super important. Because when I was younger, I could just sit on these mats for 4 hours and just, kind of spin my bow. And it wasn't really training. I was just moving a bow around. And there was value to it because I got comfortable with it. But it's a different time now, where that time is a lot more limited, and it's split between different things. It's split between, going to different family events and teaching, and also training and traveling for seminars and competition, and doing the backside of the work that people don't see. So I think balance has become very, very important for me. And then efficiency within my training. Sometimes I only have 45 minutes in a day to train. So what is that 45 minutes going to look like? It's got to be, all gas, no brakes for 45 minutes. And then recovery and taking care of my body physically has become a lot more important as well. Doing more like actual exercising and workouts, not just run the form, 7 times in a row, but mixing in different exercises, calisthenics, plyometrics, to really take care of my body in general, so that hopefully one day I can still walk after all this, toll on the body. So I think efficiency in the training and just balance of life has kind of become more of a priority.
Yeah, I could. As I'm right now, just looking long term of like, what is my career, or what can I do for the rest of this year, and can I still compete next year? Yes, should be good. Now, pretty much the same thing that he said. It's like, okay, well, I still have time. But time is limited. I have to be a little bit more. I have to be more. I want to say careful, but I have to plan it on my own now. So there's that responsibility, and it makes me happy too. And it also gives me like I still do it. I still compete because, well, I like the challenge. I still try new stuff, still get new ideas. Like, not only do I train forms and my body, but I also have times where I'm just trying ideas out, you know? So I'm staying engaged with it. For school, which I go to school, I'm getting a degree in exercise science. Like, there's stuff that I study or listen to podcasts that, you know, makes me think about our sport and like, well, what can I do to apply this education that I'm learning, paying for, to apply it to what I'm doing right now? Um, so yeah, just being a student really all the time, still asking you, Marcel, questions about, creative forms, um, coming up with my own ideas, and, getting your feedback and your ideas as well. So, um, yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, the reason why I wanted to ask that is because, again, there's obviously people listening that look up to you all and everything. It's like, all right, what's the mindset of a person who's, at the top of what they're doing from a sport karate element, but also has, other things going on, right? How can I, right? I mean, are we training properly? Are we being efficient? Are we, doing all these, all the right things within the given, right amount of time, right? But I think, and one thing that I wanted to flip on you guys, we get on time. I know this is okay. One thing I wanted to flip on you guys with that, and it's something that, you battle with on and off after your you know, you guys, I mean, Ben, how long have you been competing now for?
Like 12 years.
12 years, yeah. Dawson, about the same, right?
Yeah,
So,
about the same.
Identity for a long time. You go to these tournaments, and this is for anybody listening. You go to these tournaments, and this is what you do, right? You're at the top of your game. This is your identity. Makes you feel good. Not necessarily winning. Makes you feel good going and hitting something the way you wanted to hit it, etc. Right? And you got that mindset, and then you move on to the next chapter, whenever that is. Doesn't matter when it is. Doesn't matter if it's next year or 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, right? But you're going to get to a point mentally where you're going to maybe struggle with what is my identity at this point, because I'm not competing anymore, right? And so my point on this is the reason why I wanted to ask what the mindset is you take that same mindset and then you just transfer it to the next thing that you're doing, whether it be running karate schools, finishing school, different career, doesn't matter, right? Because the martial arts is the foundation, is the base, right, into everything we're doing. That's why my daughter has to get a black belt, right? It teaches us so many things about goal setting, mental attributes, all that stuff, right? But there are times where I've struggled in the past with having a sense of identity after I competed for so long, right? I was not necessarily depressed about it, but it was like, all right, well, now what do I do physically, right? What do I do mentally, right? To keep myself on edge, right? So whatever you're going to do, have that same mindset after the competition days, right? You go to a job interview or whatever, be like, all right, I'm going to be me. I'm not going to be like that person or that person or that person, right? Because maybe someone went to a better school or this or that or whatever a better school means. I don't know, but I'm going to be me. I'm going to bring my product, my level of execution into this moment or whatever, and meet that moment every single time in life, right? So that's just why I wanted to ask that question, because, as we get further down our path in competition or whatever and start to do other things in life and eventually start pursuing other things, being able to be at the top of your game mindset wise, and then it doesn't matter what we're doing, right? Then you find something or whatever and you transition over to something and then you do that, but it's always still with you, and then you've got the time and you've got the love of what you're doing or whatnot, so you continue to coach, like Marcel and myself or whatever. But just kind of throwing that out there.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate that.
Well, that's good. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you guys for flipping the roles on us. We appreciate the extra insight and the questions there. I won't speak 100% for Dawson, but I know for a fact that I really appreciate you guys taking the time for us, not just tonight, but throughout the years. We've worked with you guys in the past a lot, and then to still have that connection and be able to share that wisdom and just any conversations, we appreciate that. It's very valuable to us. So thank you guys for that.
We appreciate it for sure. And it's good to stay in contact and communication with you guys. Love what you guys are doing. Stick with it. This is a style in your life, and it's going to affect your lifestyle. So, just keep with it. You're not going to compete forever. You know that. But the mindset, the mentality, your physical approach to doing this, it's going to be how you do any and everything else. So keep with it.
Absolutely. Happy to be on with you guys again. Appreciate everything. And for everyone competing next weekend, good luck, safe travels, and everyone not. Out there, keep pushing, keep training for the next thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. You guys be well.
See you
Anytime. Good show. Well, thank you to everybody that tuned in today. It's been another great episode of The Clean Truth. We will catch you guys next time and see you at the U.S. Open.